right, everybody. We are tapping back in with episode 5, I Can Transform You. And the thought here is talking content transformation, going from an existing static linear PowerPoint PDF into an interactive, navigable experience. And no one better to be joining us than Tiled co-founder and design lead at Bridger Creative, Matt Simpson. You're a doctor. You are Dr. Matt Simpson, MD. The MD stands for microapp designer. And
like it.
I gave you your credentials. You earned the credentials. I'm just here to talk about it.
So I can add it to LinkedIn, right?
Absolutely.
New certification.
All right. Do it.
For those listening who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Matt Simpson, one of the most genuine good people I have ever met. I believe they say salt of the earth. So
Thanks.
excited for you all to get to know the guy over the next however long it takes. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited to dig in. Or tap in. Sorry.
Let's go.
Yeah.
We like the plug. Let's start with you. You're wearing a kind of interesting shirt. Can you tell me what Bridger is and how that works within the kind of tiled ecosystem a bit?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Bridger, we're a smaller UX, UI agency. We do a lot of branding and video as well. But yeah, I mean, our core design thought is that we love to make things going from static to interactive, right? That's all, for us, it's all about the experience. And so how do we make content more interesting? And yeah, huge believers in making things look good and on brand as well. How it fits in the tiled ecosystem is obviously the interactivity, right? Just getting that content. We know we're so used to just sort of boring static content, but really, how do we make it more interactive, more engaging? So that's what we love. That's what we love about tiled.
Can you tell us a little bit? I won't put you on the spot in terms of numbers, but how many microapps do you think you've actually made in your tenure?
Wow. Yeah, I don't even know. It's got to be like upward 300-400 or so. Maybe I'm exaggerating.
I think you're undervaluing yourself. I think you're in the 1,000. I think you've cracked 1,000. If I had to guess,
it could be up there.
We're gonna make a new status for you because Sean is coming for it. He's trying to be like the next, pro user year, and I think you're a far second, my guy.
Well, it's easy when I'm basically asked to take what Matt's already done from a creative genius and just say, hey, can you take this Figma file and tweak it? I'm like, yeah, I can try. Won't do it justice.
You do the revisions.
I'll gladly hand off the crown to you, Sean.
It's
quick before we get into it, though. I do want to hear a little bit about the origin story. Sean mentioned that you were a co-founder. That's co-founder with Daryl Swain, James Gentry, you, Matt Simpson, and the other brother, Jeremiah Simpson, right?
Yeah.
What did the kind of impetus or conversations that you guys were having kind of reveal that tiled was a good solution or something to be created that was a gap? What was going on, or what were you creating that made you want to say, let's not use another tool, let's just make it ourselves?
When we met Daryl, it was he already had kind of this idea of kind of these displays and kiosks, right? How do we give a user or a client to basically kind of put the power into their hands of editing or creating their own sort of displays, more of kind of these tile systems. And so we thought it was really interesting idea. But at the same time, here at Bridger, we've had our agency for probably 15 plus years, and it's always been started out branding and then started getting more into the UX UI, and so we were already solving a lot of problems on the more of the digital side. So it was a pretty good marriage when we encountered Daryl, and so we were working with we were kind of involved with McKinsey, which is one of the big 5 sort of management consulting agencies, firms. And at the time, we were pitching. They had us coming in with our team, pitching to these big Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies around the world. And what we do is make these presentations, right? It's because obviously they need to kind of show their value to these big companies, and basically with their services and everything. So what we would do as an agency is like, I think they just pump out, I mean, millions of decks every day, seems like. And so we'd get these, but we thought, how can we make these more interesting? So what we ended up doing is we'd spend, a decent amount of time just building the content and the experience. And then we'd kind of move into the second phase of give it to a developer to develop it, right? And so that was great. That was what we were all used to, but it turned out to be, a lot of time, a lot of cost. And in the end of the day, as a designer, who's kind of nitpicky at trying to be making everything pixel perfect, it never really came back pixel perfect, right? And so obviously there's a give and take on certain things, but there came to a certain point where at that current state, that's when we were looking at sort of tiled as well. As like there was that idea of sort of creating just like your own experience. And so, we were kind of constrained to these sort of big kiosks, but we thought, no, the problem with the kiosk is that only one person can interact with it at one time. But at the same time, we were like, well, we got all these iPads, all these tablets where someone can, thousands, just a ton of people have these tablets in their hands. So can we bring that idea to these tablets? And so how do we build the software that we can now allow us as designers build our own interactive presentations without using a developer, right? So that the reason, and the big wins on that is that number one, we didn't have to pay necessarily a developer. We didn't have to spend the time to use that developer. And the third is that whatever I design would actually appear into the presentation. So that's kind of, in a nutshell.
Yeah, super interesting too. Like if you think about 15 years ago when kind of Bridger was coming on to the scene, as well as 10 years ago when Tiled was being formed by this group of you guys, kiosks were really prominent. The iPad, I think, is only about 16 years old, and so it's still kind of new technology for you to be innovating and pioneering with. But definitely hear the discrepancy or the gap that needed bridging to have your own environment, your own sandbox to kind of play in, because design is always iterative, and so if you're continually passing that back and forth, the time frame is just too far out to probably execute and achieve the outcome and the time that's actually available. When I think about sitting in those spots where you have to create assets for a seller or something, like you said, an RFP, those timeframes are really quick, like weeks, sometimes days. I can't imagine having to go back and forth with the developer in that time frame that feels mutually beneficial, where you don't like hate each other by the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes the outcome you can feel that tension. So sounds like a great solution to a kind of prototyping system at first, and then turn into more of a presentation interactivity first solution. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, and that's what you bring up. It's key to like the prototyping, right? And like constantly iterating, and that's like key to a UX designer, right? Is like it takes a few steps for us to come up with the ideal scenario, right? And so like me as a UX designer, it's like I'm going to present something and then I want to test it, right? But be able to test it in the old way.
Is the UX designer ever finished?
Never.
Is the project ever like really done?
Yeah.
Does it reach a finish line?
That's why we need a timeline, and just like I will do whatever I need to do in that timeline, and then you get what you get,
Yeah.
But the idea is like, the faster we can move, the better the presentation or the better the experience will become, right?
And the testing information, you're looking at data that people are clicking, or information from your team to see if it's working the way that you intend, or can you expand a little bit more on what testing looks like and how that becomes a part of the process?
Yeah, because like part of the design process, right, is like, at least myself, I'm not a big fan of just spitting out the first thing that comes to my mind, right? It's like I'll probably have at least 2 or 3, obviously depending on how much time I have, but like, even just like layout wise, here's a couple, 2 or 3 directions, but then bringing it into a tool, like a prototyping tool, I want to be able to sort of test it, like tap it, right? Like what happens in here. And so, so I really just like, again, as quick as, if I can have sort of instantaneous sort of feedback, just myself first, and then move on to, hey, just my internal team. Hey, can you guys test this without prodding anything, right? Like just test it. Here's kind of the goal I'm trying to achieve. Now try to get feedback from them and then and then iterate and then move on to now testing with the client, right? And so we're just kind of like continue to refine as we go, involving first myself, my team, and then client base.
Gotcha. I think it's also super helpful when you think about Tiled's origin coming from a tablet environment. I think it really speaks to how we've landed where we are today in terms of some of the choices that were made around designing and like pagination over a long scroll type environment. That's really one of the key differentiators in my mind from a microapp to a microsite, and being able to drill down in terms of, like you said, testing, but it also kind of informs why pathway analytics became so prominent to see what they're clicking in and in what order. And so knowing that, one, this was prototyping in containers and being able to be agile and in different environments, specifically to like a tablet or touchscreen thing, I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of what kind of where we landed today.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think the unique thing about like a microapp, like Tiled itself, is that yeah, for eons, right? Decks have existed for decades. We've had, or I think a few decades, we've had websites or landing pages.
Hold on, decades.
Yeah,
You didn't even know you were doing it.
Sean, you can always come out with the good ones. So yeah, like what is that marriage, right? Like we're not here to like completely revolutionize something that we're not even used to, right? It's like how do we combine like the deck experience to like the website experience? So that's where we believe is like let's and again we're believers in storytelling, right? That's a great thing about an efficient deck, an effective deck, is that there's still a great story to be built in there, but how do you navigate it from one place to another versus starting at page 1 all the way to page 50? Like how do we bring that in there, and then also how do we every company has like just a ton of media or assets that they want to use, and so how do we bring all that in, right? And so that's where our belief is, like using these containers throughout that storyline where now I can access everything, whether it be navigation or assets, right? From video to forms to scrolls, things like that. So again, improving on that experience from one page to another.
I couldn't say it better.
Matt, going back to, the McKinsey days when you were creating these presentations, passing them off to developers, where were you designing at that time? I know design tools and the design workflow, especially nowadays with like AI, has changed. But like I remember starting here almost 8 years ago and was using Photoshop to design a microapp, and you reached back and smacked me across the back of the head real quick, and we're like, what's going on here? So what was your kind of progression, I guess, on the UX design front, where you were and kind of where things are now?
Yeah, this probably dates me, but it was Quark Express. Have you heard of that, Sean?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
No, I think Kyle say the same thing?
That was too far down the line. No, I guess at the time we were building in. Some of it was like actually Illustrator, because I think just because we were moving pretty quick in there. But I think on the UX side, it was more on Sketch. Sketch was kind of the big platform back then. Yeah, I guess before that it was Photoshop and Illustrator. And then moved into Sketch, and then to XD, and now Figma. So, but at the same time,
is Figma the favorite, or like if you look back at that whole journey, do you still have a primary tool that you really wish stuck around?
No, Figma's like it's hands down the best place to be, in regards to just because they're innovating so quick. Sketch, I did really like Sketch. XD was great as well, but I think we all know that. I'm not sure if they're innovating too much now. I don't want to speak for them, but
you were hoping Sketch would have been what Figma became, right? Trailblazer, another option as far as tool in your toolbox, right?
Yeah, and we still use Illustrator, Photoshop, day in, day out. Yeah, so we're normal designers. We'll use every tool we can get, but it all kind of comes together in Figma and then over to Tiled.
with the different design tools and just where we see customers coming to us saying, hey, here's what I have, right? An existing PowerPoint and PDF. In most cases, it takes a brilliant mind like yourself to kind of step back and rethink it, right? Or reimagine it of what could this look like, right? What could we be doing differently to drive engagement, really catch people's attention to where, wow, okay, this does not feel like your average PowerPoint. Would love to get into, whatever magic you're able to share just around your methodology, your framework. When you have big enterprise customers coming to you saying, hey, here's what we have that looks like it was built 30 years ago. Like, what is step one in kind of auditing what's there and where you can take it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely a process, that I myself work in, which I think my assumption is very similar to a lot of designers, right? And so I think just to set it up too is like, we're working with some really large companies, and they have amazing people who are creating a lot of great people who are building amazing content already, right? It's just that they're not open to, I mean, they don't know like some of the tools or even thought of making a story a bit more interactive, right? And so that's kind of where we come in, and hopefully we're opening up their eyes to a better experience, right? And so when I kind of think of that, hopefully we're helping kind of open their eyes to just a better experience. And with that comes different tools. But when we start talking about the auditing of content, right, we receive things in so many different ways. I mean, everyone works a different way. And so we're getting things, like PowerPoints or PDFs or Word docs or even websites, right? So a lot of this content exists somewhere, and maybe it's performing okay, but they want to actually deliver this content in a different way, right? So there's nothing wrong with this website. This landing page is great, but how do we, if maybe they want to send it to someone in a more navigable way, right? Same with PDFs, right? It's like, it's great as static, but once you send this off, it's dead, right? What if they wanted to change some content in here, and now they can't really, you can't take it back? Or even just like, big, large PowerPoint decks. Like, how do we build that out? So, so what we do is, number one, to see, again, we're pretty flexible on working in whatever tool that we have. But when we talk about auditing, it's like, okay, obviously as a designer, we're looking at what is the content that we can gather through here. And then I think most importantly, which I think we kind of touched on earlier, is like the client already has amazing content in regards to like a lot of this copy. But what we're doing as designers is like, trying to think through all these companies have access to just amazing media, right? So you already have the copy, but like, what are some areas or what are some assets that they have like in motion, right? Like, we just feel like, if there are certain things that like subtle movement, it kind of helps the interest within a microapp. There's also maybe screen recordings, right? A lot of our customers our clients are kind of selling, like software, right? And so what if we have like some screen recording demos, or what if we have, videos, like whether it be testimonials or product reviews? How do we bring some of those videos in? Or even like data viz, right? There's a lot of great third-party tools that have like data where you can sort of filter things, you can hover over some of the data. And so how do we bring some of that in, right?
Yeah, I think that's cool. I think especially on the PowerPoint side, easiest to see kind of the transformation from that. Like you said, it's a really great PowerPoint doc. It's very well branded. It's got elements that are already there. But even just considering that once you have a microapp and you can have depth then, right, in the layers, in the overlays, it's kind of interesting to see how you have to shift your mind a little bit to not serve everything up all on one page.
Mm-hmm.
Be really interested too. That I'm looking at this PDF. Kind of don't mean to jump ahead, but like, it's very thoughtfully laid out, especially for what I imagine is some kind of print or booklet in a showroom. Can you talk a little bit about what you're looking for there versus what you're looking for in a PowerPoint?
Yeah. Um, so for like PDF, yeah, we already know it's kind of, in a way, kind of a showpiece, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, for example, like a Herman Miller, it's more of like they're really trying to sell their design. And so how do we bring that into light, like really highlighting some of their photography. I didn't show any of them in here, but there's like little kind of illustrations of where you can kind of walk around basically this little pod, right, to see the different features. And so you can call out, little one, two, three, four, tap these and kind of see what you get within, this little door or this desk, things like that, right? And so, and I don't know. I mean, every company's different, every asset's a little different, but just trying to kind of reflect off of the white space that they're using as well, and how do you bring that into a micro app? So
More about capturing than the feeling of the brand and what that looks like, meeting them a little bit closer to what they are already presenting, and then translating that to digital. So, like the white space that you mentioned is probably still an element that you would bring over, but we're also looking at a different dimension and a different kind of format that requires, again, clickability and not wanting to serve everything up on one page.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's important to realize for like as an agency, right? Where we work with multiple businesses or clients per day and different projects, right? And so I think it's really important to number one know how to capture their brand without having to like really have them hold your hand on every single piece, right? So like, how do you read that brand? Obviously, we need to get it's nice to have the color palette beforehand. It's nice to have their fonts beforehand. But when we're like laying out things, like we're just trying to do an audit. A lot of times we'll just go through their website. If they have any PDFs that they can send us brochures, we really try to study and audit their current brand, so we can now have that reflect within the micro app too, without making it super painful for them to say, I thought these guys knew what they were doing. So
Very cool.
hopefully we know what we're doing.
So what happens when you go move over to a Word doc where it's really black and white?
Yeah. So yeah, and again, every designer is a little different. Some people are maybe a little uncomfortable with starting with a Word doc, but for us here at Bridger, we are very open to it
I heard a
because it gives
rumor it's your
us,
favorite.
yeah, for us it gives us the most creative license, right? And because sometimes I think you can get caught in a little bit of a rut, of like always having to stick with what they sort of laid out, right? Sometimes you need to just because that's the way they're used to telling the story. But when you get something like a blank canvas like this, right? And they do have. I think it's nice when they at least give you some elements to sort of build off of, right? And so they already had. This client has, already a nice, really nice design system, and and they're using a certain language throughout. But then, yeah, everything else is just kind of text. So this is where this is like probably like a 40-page Word doc, right? A Google
Oh
Doc
wow.
that we received. And so as designers, we do read through it. Obviously, a lot of the stuff is kind of like above our head. But for the most part, we're just trying to, number one, understand the content and kind of work with a client on what are the main sort of buckets, what are the main chapters and sections we're trying to build out. And so you'll see sometimes we have templates too that we'll give them where we say, hey, we need sort of our H1, our H2, H3. And so you kind of see how they're kind of creating these already kind of in H1,
Yeah.
H2s, things like that. So we're really trying to understand the content, and then also understanding the use case as well. If it's like a playbook, then yeah, we are going to have more kind of just straight up content, like more content heavy pages. But at the same time, we're trying to keep maybe some of the pages, like an intro page would be a lot of breathable room. But then once we drill down, maybe a second level or even a third level, yeah, you would have like maybe some tighter text. But again, this opens us up to, yeah, if there's a lot of text, how to bring in like a big image or an infographic, type of thing. So we're just trying to be aware of that.
Interesting too, like you said, they have a really thought out design system, and it's hard to tell here on the Word doc, but probably similarly valuable in terms of just seeing assets and discerning and taking that skill set you have to say this is what the brand is, and also just providing that your ethos and your concept in writing. I think sounds like a similarly valuable with maybe a lower lift if you're not quite where you want to be yet.
Yeah, and I think that's where you have to kind of leverage your client too. Is like, luckily they were able to invite us to like their brand library, where we have access to images, and we're kind of going through, sifting through, these large image libraries and saying, hey, we think this is appropriate for, this teamwork collection set, right? Or let's bring in some images of teams, right? And so, without having them again to hold your hand every moment, but like, how do we as designers who are used to kind of making those decisions bring their brand in, and it just creates a lot more credibility and trust, between you and the client.
It's fun too, because it's like, I love listening to you talking to customers as well when there's this like, oh yeah, we've been doing this for so long. There's things in this we know don't work well, right? Whether they've gotten bad feedback on it or things that they want to cut or rethink, and like getting a, what is it, left brain, right brain? What's the creative design side?
Both brains.
Is it both? Okay. Getting that perception to helping like lead people to that decision. It's like, trying to help them put that creative hat on, and really you being able to spell out, here's where it's worked well, and here's, what we know is the status quo. So,
well, yeah, I mean, to bounce off of that, right, is like, that's the importance of a design process, right? That's why we don't just say, have a kickoff call and then lock the doors and say, okay, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a microapp, right? Because then it's like, end of the day, it's like, well, how did you come up with that? And number one, it could waste a lot of time if you're wrong, right? Like, again, it's sort of like, how do you build the trust? And when you bring the client along the process, they're actually the one designing it, right? So I shouldn't even be on this call, because really it's the customer who's building this whole thing, right? I'm just like the hands, and my designers, we're all just the hands doing this.
Well,
But
let's not. Whoa. Let's not upset the designers here. Let's not undersell, because I think part of what you're describing too is you're able to disseminate information and look at what a brand does and see its visual language. I think that is something that you've been talking about that I'm just kind of picking up is. I think designers are sometimes underutilized as just the hands, but what you've been talking about as we go through these types of assets that you normally get from customers is also a lot of strategy. And I imagine that probably because you're building in a kind of spatial way with the UI UX background, that you can see patterns and connect dots that on flat static pages are harder for others to see, that maybe are clearer for you to speak to. And so when you're talking about the why and how this brand system translates to this image in this library and this media, it could be pulled out and showed in a more visual way. I think there's a lot of misconception about that component of being a designer that I think you're really revealing in a real compelling way so far. I'm hooked, and I do the same job as you from time to time.
well, that's the thing is like, and that's what that's what our clients are looking for, right? Like that, hey, they're the subject matter expert, right? They know the content in and out, but they're like, I just need someone to like bring this to life. And so that's where our brains come into play, right? It's like, I love your content, but now how do I bring you that next step closer to a better presentation, or a better story, or a better design, right? And so when we're marrying kind of the brand with the content and a lot of this media, then that's where sort of the magic happens of like bringing this all into one microapp, one experience where someone can engage with it, right?
Yeah. You too can be a doctor if you combine everything that Matt just said.
MD.
if you take this red pill and this blue pill at the same time. Matt, I think just taking inventory on these, right? All of the different types of things you bring in, kind of auditing it, being able to formulate, like the chapters, the outlines, etc. How do you push that forward? How do you take that to the next step?
Yeah, so I think I can move over to this again. I was just slapping things in that we've
This
done
guy,
just
you keep
recently.
saying he just slapped it
Yeah.
together. It's got
I
lines
look at
and
these. I still have
borders and
comments on these. Yeah, it's still a mess. Um, so what we do, like there's a ton of tools out here, but we use FigJam, right? To just quickly organize. I think you could have the best looking presentation, best micro app in the world, but if there's no like really organization to it, it's going to fail, right? And so what we believe, we're huge believers in, like, how do you organize this? And again, it's not rocket science. Like, even websites are based off of organization, and so it's very similar, right? You're just kind of like mapping things out of like a cover to contents to an overview. So here's where you're starting to build out your different chapters or sections, right? And this one's a pretty large one. We have multiple levels, right? So we have kind of like this tier one up here, and then it goes down to a tier two, and maybe even kind of splits into like a tier three, right? Where you kind of see this. And this one is like where, again, this one started out as a Word doc. So we're just screenshotting things and kind of like moving things around. And this stuff is like super quick, right? We're getting on a call with a customer saying, hey, this is how we see your content, and this is how we're laying it out. Does this make sense? Like, oh, actually, yeah, I love this, but actually this entire section should be moved over. It makes more sense for it to be in the how to market, right? And so where we kind of be able to move things around. Again, this is the part of the process where the client loves as well, of like, oh, I'm actually helping build this as well, right? So every step you're showing them, it just it, you kind of lead them along that process where they can kind of be part of that design. There's that one. This one's another one where they had everything kind of in a PowerPoint, and then we're very similar, right? Cover, contents. Here's your main sort of pillars, and then how to bring this into. And then here we're starting to see, which I'll get into more on the sketch side, but we're starting to see consistent patterns within their content, right? Okay, we're using these columns here. So maybe we could start design out some sort of expand collapse type of pieces, right? Here we're seeing, oh, these are sort of individual product sort of detail pages that you want. So maybe, here you have this whole sort of contents. And I purposely have these kind of blurred because I don't know how much of this contents, it could be sensitive. So this could be more of this gallery type of page, but then you click into one and maybe you get this overlay, right? Because it's a pretty consistent layout, right? You have content and then a screenshot. So, oh, this could be a template as well. As designers, I think, how do we become an efficient in the design process? And so those are the patterns we're trying to look for to sort of speed us along on the design side. Yeah, and then also like certain areas where we do little Venn diagrams. So, if we're presented these kind of three little buckets. So just jotting down ideas really quick, and again, taking the client through this and say, hey, does this resonate for what you guys are looking for? And this one is just like super quick. This would also started out as like just like I think it was a Google Doc. And so really just trying to think through the different stages, and then, what's all the content that goes in here, but then also bulleting. So these are the bulleted. But when I go in like a long scroll, right? We want all the content in one area, but again, just pages to subpages to scrolls. So that's kind of like on the organization side of sort of the outline, which is kind of, again, part of a little peek into our process on that side.
And so, yeah, you were talking about chapters, and I can kind of see how you're doing that. That becomes your navigation, right? And similar to how you just said on that last one, it's really interesting how you're already breaking it into the features and the elements that play well within the kind of tiled builder, and then seeing it there, very plain and simple. Does this work? Does it move? Co-creating and building that collaboration. What's the next? What are you doing after that? They've signed off and like, this is right. This makes sense. This is all my content. I already love it. What do we do now?
Yeah. So then this becomes where myself, our designers, we kind of really do our thing, right? It's like now we're just, I'm a big believer in paper and pen. Like I've got a sketchbook just chock full of just doodles and little kind of just little pages of UI and
I love
UX,
that.
right?
Could we get a little bit more zoom in on these though? Because I
Yeah,
think these are really valuable, and to see kind of how your brain works and how you're laying out, it's already just as organized
yeah.
as this doc you threw together as well.
Yeah. And again, I'm obviously carrying over everything I've already kind of looked at, right? So what I'm doing here, right, is like I'm still using these sort of chapters, these sub chapters, and like just bringing them just again because I want to move quick. I was kind of listing these out, and again, I'm kind of a creature of habit too, and so you'll see that I'm trying to bring in a lot of these my chapters here, just so I have this to reference, and then I'm looking at these pages here, right? And so now, like, I always want I have this cover, maybe this, maybe a couple versions to it. I don't know what I want to do. Here I have this page where I know I want to put an image here and just text here. And again, you'll see it's super crude, super raw, right? And so you even see I want like a left navigation, but this is the one that's selected. These ones are not. But then I'm trying to
I think
find
this is so
ways.
cool. We have very different backgrounds. In architecture, we iterate in a very similar way. It's, I think, the fastest way to get all the ideas. And I'm curious, how far back does this approach go in your history and your career?
Oh yeah, so I went to school for it was the traditional graphic design, and so I didn't even really know what I didn't know what UX UI was. We didn't have a program in that back in my day.
Well,
It
to
was
be fair,
very just
I don't. You also came up in a grew up alongside technology, right? I mean, when's the first time how old were you when you first used a computer?
well, my dad was a programmer, so we had the old green screen back in the day, like yeah. So my dad was a programmer. My mom was like a fine art. She painted a lot. So I feel like a graphic designer was kind of like the perfect like child
This
of
guy's
that,
got
right?
generational
So
talent, just like coming through.
yeah. So now I always played like games on my computer growing up, but never. The funny thing is, I'd always like my brother and we'd always we painted T-shirts and sold them to kids in our neighborhood. I always drew like my folders at school were just covered in logos that I would always draw, and I always thought, oh, I never even thought of like being able to make a job out of designing logos. But I went to college and I found out about graphic design. I'm like, oh, I could actually make money making logos, right? So that's where sketching came in. Like, if you're designing a logo, I'm drawing at least 100 logos, right? Just for
Wow.
hopefully one to end up in being used. And so, yeah, sketching is my best friend because I control it, 100% of it, and I can iterate super quick on it. And you'll see like everything is just super, super rough and crude for the first draft. And then, yeah, you start to refine it and refine it. So,
I'm just envisioning one of your textbooks, like from middle school, wrapped in like paper bags and the Walmart, Flash or what Spark.
Spark.
There was, I guarantee you, there was an early one of those in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of historical logos on my screen, on my folders.
This guy made the Walmart logo.
Yeah, back in a previous life. Yeah. At an agency I worked in New York. It was not commissioned to Matt Simpson.
We are
designer
giving it
MD.
to you. You take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Little plug there to add some credence there. That this very humble man would never say himself.
Yeah, let me just kind of just walk through a few more of these, right? Like, again, you'll see, because I have a knowledge in tile and how things work, right? So you'll see even in my illustrations, like sketches, this is going to be a scroll over here. So I'm just purposely going over, and I'm trying to like, if the content's correct, like I'm going to start to build in different features of tiled, right? And so I know we could do this horizontal scroll. And so how do we bring in sort of timelines and how it's going to scroll through? How can we do expand, collapse? Again, if I remember correctly, this page was all 1, 2, and 3 was on one page, right? But let's use their great imagery and just really highlight step 1, and let's collapse 2 and 3, right? In activity, I'm allowed to kind of expand, collapse things. Yeah, you'll see some of this stuff as well. Yeah, and then just mobile, right? I think I have one down here where Oh yeah, so we knew we were gonna do a desktop version. This is kind of like this cross section of a brain, a baby brain, and then if I can click different portions of the brain, it surfaces correct content for specific content for that section. But
Cool.
we knew we wanted to build a mobile format as well. So again, how do you borrow some of the design to go from desktop to mobile? And so purposely saying, okay, I knew this was gonna be a scroll, so I wanted to be like a decent width that I can just fit into a mobile screen as well. So I don't have to redesign everything from desktop to mobile. And so I knew I wanted to put the brain here, and this I could use this exact same scroll on this page as well, right? So trying to find ways that I can make my design more efficient.
So you write down, you sketch these out, Matt's doodle pad, and then you upload it to AI, and then it spits out a microapp design. Is that what happens?
Snap the finger and it's done. Yeah. So next step then is just again trying to move quick. So obviously this stuff I don't share with the client. This is just it's my personal journal, right? So what we do here is now just move quickly over to kind of wireframing. And so obviously you can get as intricate as you want. Sometimes we'll just show a very quick, again, a lot of times we'll just show at least 2 or 3 concepts, depending on the timeline of the project. But maybe we show like 4 key screens of the content for maybe 2 or 3 different design directions, just to get comfortable. Basically ask the client, hey, which one would you like? What fits your content the best? And so we select one, and then we start to build out the rest throughout, right?
What's the benefit, in your opinion, to doing the sketch before this? Because I think a lot of designers go straight to this step.
I just think it's quicker to jot things down. It's kind of funny, and again, maybe that's just me, but there are times when I just jump straight into a computer and start designing, and I would say the majority of the time I get stuck. I'm like, why am I stuck? And it's like, oh wait, it's because I didn't sketch. I don't know. I think it may just be a personal thing for me. But the ones where I start out to sketch, I know that this is my blueprint, and now I actually just like almost, it's almost kind of like lay over it. This is my onion skin, and say, boom, I'm just gonna start just quickly design these out, and then that's where now I can quickly start moving things around. It's like, oh yeah, this was super lame. Like, why did I do that? I should just move this entire section over to the right, versus the left. So that's where wireframing really works.
And once you've done this so many times that as you're sketching things out, you are like, oh yeah, that left-handed nav I already have as a component in Figma that I can kind of recycle, reuse. Like, your component library has got to be extensive, expansive, whatever you want to call it. Do you feel like you're able to kind of take what you do or you're able to grab and standardize your process from a lot of these different design elements?
Yeah, we've done this so many times that we know some, I guess, sort of elements that we like to use, but we're big believers also of like, we don't necessarily copy paste from one to another. Like, obviously the elements always going to exist, but how do you make it to be their brand, right? And so we try our hardest here at Bridger to make each micro app a bit more unique to that specific use case, and obviously to that specific client. But there's obviously efficiencies that we gain, being able to use, and that's the beauty of Figma too. A lot of these UX tools is being able to create a very efficient design system where you can move pretty quick and everything becomes on brand and consistency, right?
Do you have kind of like I know we have some like befores, if you will, from a existing document standpoint. Do you have any afters? Like, could you show kind of a?
Yeah, so I think I'll highlight one, which we just did with IBM's one of our big clients, and we've been working with them for a long time. And so what we did, which I kind of showed here, right, is like they came to us, and again, they have this amazing design system, amazing content, amazing website, right? And so they had this sort of IBM plus Ferrari case study. And so they have a ton of case studies, but they were like, hey, can we, instead of having some of our reps just send a link to this case study, how can we control that more, right? And so a microapp was a perfect, because now I can just send them one case study and then be able to see if, number one, did the user even access it, and then what did they access in there, right? And so what you'll see, which I kind of walk through, we're not like really, obviously we're not recreating any of their content. Like their content's great, but at the end of the day, this is just kind of like a long scroll, and you kind of read here. It takes a while to get all the way to the bottom, and then you're kind of done, right?
It's kind of created in like the traditional way you would create a white paper case study. It's I don't want to say the traditional way, but let's say that the traditional way.
Which is nothing. There's nothing wrong with it, right? There's obviously a certain use case for it, and again, they've done a great job. But how do we improve some of that experience? And so, what we do, this is what they had when we first worked on it. And the other great thing too, with a website, you could bring in video, you could bring in carousels, all the things, a lot of things that you can in a micro app as well. But how do you make it just easier to navigate through this content, right? And so maybe a lot of those who will tap into this episode know Tile already. So or you can look at other previous episodes to see how this actually works. But what we're doing is just grabbing kind of like the branding and some of the stuff we're just pulling off of the website. And we're thinking, okay, wouldn't it be awesome if we had this amazing Ferrari F1 Ferrari video behind here, and what do we bring a video here, and then maybe we could hover over this, and I'll kind of show you what we ended up coming up with. And then we'll still bring in some of that scroll. Like we don't want everything to be super clickable, but I think this page would be very appropriate for a scroll still, and put a video. Bring in some of these call outs for the quotes, bring in some the business outcomes, and then let's bring in some more of their solutions, but then kind of have them hover over and then link out, right? And then let's build in a sort of this overlay of where this field marketer can now create their own message and to the client that they're going to send it to. Right. So this is kind of like behind the scenes, the bones of a micro app.
What I like about this especially is that you can see from one long scroll how many pages you can break that out into. And not to say that you have to, but the ability to be able to get more information and narrow in. I also like that you can see so much of what you said, like you're not changing their content, but you can also see so many threads of what they already created, but you're just surfacing it up in a different way, and now we can see what that looks like in practice. But it's really interesting to see that it's not a redo. It's more of a reshuffling. If we go back to another episode about cards, but a reshuffling of the content, not necessarily saying we need to start over.
And or purposely, not trying to recreate the wheel, right? It's like you guys already have great stuff. How do we just make it a bit more bite-sized, right? And help that end user kind of navigate it themselves, but easily be able to find something that they may be interested in. We don't want them to get lost. So again, just as a quick reminder, this is the website that it still currently lives. And so again, you'll see this long scroll, great assets. So what we've done from what you guys just saw in Figma is we synced everything over. Again, it has lots of some interactivity.
Really cool too, watching you scroll through this long scroll, and where you naturally pause almost seems like matches up with the pages you've made. So like the screenfuls become the pagination system as well. Some people get real freaked out when they see a lot of pages, but you're also doing it inherently just by scrolling anywhere you are online.
Yeah, and that's the importance of looking for the H1s or H2s, right? Like in a well-designed website or even PowerPoint, like a lot of that stuff is already there. It's just how do we now, how do we create the outline for a different experience, the microapp experience. So yeah, let me just jump over to what we ended up coming up with. And I don't want to take credit for this one either, but it's one of our designers, Han, who's also Brooks Magic at Bridger. Yeah, so here's the microapp in full effect, right? And so you just bring it in, just really just owning this video because it adds a lot of like good personality. And as me coming in to look at this case study, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. So let's start with it, right? So here I can hover over and get started. You'll see this little bit of motion here. So now it kind of entices me to click on this where I can open it up and watch this. Some of these numbers are a big deal for them. So let's just if they were to see anything, let's start off with 2x and 35%. But then have kind of these three obvious buckets I could jump into, bring in these hovers to. It's very subtle things. I'm going to click case study. Here I can start to read what that is. Have these external links as well. If I want to watch the video. So again, embedding a YouTube video because again, IBM has just a lot of content at the ready. And then kind of scrolling through here. We're also just adding in different little effects, like little nudges where trying to make the experience is very obvious, a little more foolproof, bring in maybe some motion that says, hey, scroll here. Business outcomes, IBM solutions. So again, kind of just bringing in some of these hovers and then you can, hit that external link to go out to that page. So again, it's a great way to be this sort of container of bringing all the necessary information into one spot, but then being able to just exit out or just direct them to even more information as well. And then kind of lastly, just end off with, a field marketer, what if they want to, what you'll see in Tile is that we can personalize sort of this message as well from any rep who wants to use this. So this way, we only have to create one design, but 50 reps can use this and put in their own message here, right? So
We're looking at this whole process, and I know that the burning question on the other side of our screen is, this is a really long process. You've gone through 4 steps, and the outcome is incredible. But what's stopping me from just plugging in a prompt in AI and having something that kind of looks similar in an AI generated, I won't name them, but in an AI generated platform or an AI first platform that comes out with presentations?
yeah, I think one of the obvious ones is just brand compliance. I think there definitely are some models now where you can upload a brand guidelines and prompt it to say, hey, make a presentation based off these brand guidelines. So there's a little bit of danger in that, right? I think that's kind of where it's nice to have that sort of human element to at least control that a bit more. I'm sure one day we'll get to be in a pretty good spot. But also I think it's just being able to kind of have that, I guess my fear of AI sort of is that everything's going to look similar and become vanilla. And so it's just nice to have that sort of human element who can still control, who's actually kind of doing their own research and taking it where they feel it can go based off of the feedback that they've heard directly from a client or from a customer, and always being able to apply it on their own, right? And so you're still letting, I'll admit we use AI here at Bridger. But a lot of times we're using it for more of kind of our systems or kind of shortcutting some ideas. Or even I do think AI is kind of nice when you can, maybe you want more ideas or something where you can, it spits out a bunch of ideas in the beginning and say, oh, I like this, this, and this from these different directions, and how do I bring it into one?
Yeah,
Right,
it kind of
so-
sounds like your sketch phase, right? A thought partner that can iterate really quickly, but without real consequence of an outcome that you want to put in front of someone to review. I think what's really cool about showing your process is you've kind of showed what's invisible in your best work. You've revealed the kind of gone behind the curtain about how you go from a Word doc to a micro app. Doesn't have to be a lot of steps, but it does have to be intentional, and it does have to be thoughtful about one, your system, and marrying it with the other, your customers or your client system as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, again, depending on the project, the timeline, the client, every project is a little different. And obviously, the more you do it, every process is slightly different, right? But the more you do it, the more you refine it, and the more like things can go quick. And sometimes, yeah, you get stumped, right? And so, yeah, to me, I believe in the process, and so I stick with it. But that's when it's also nice to have more people around you to kind of get you out of maybe like a rut or something. Which is why I always like to work with like a team. But even if I'm on my own, I think yes, there's definitely things out there where you can kind of sort of get you out of the funk. And
I also think it starts to answer that question that we kind of teased out earlier, which is UI UX work ever done? It sounds like by you following this process about auditing and sketching and wireframing, that's informing your at least initial finished line. How do you measure, and how do you know when that's done? How do you know when that Ferrari case study feels shippable?
that's where I really leverage the client to know that, because they are the subject matter expert, right? Like when they're content with it, then I feel good. Like I've delivered from my point of view. And I think the beauty of digital work and even microapps, right, is there's still, once we ship it, we can always come back to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of like being able to ship something off and then just like, all right, good luck. Like I still like to have that connection with the end customer to say, okay, let's try it out for a week, 2 weeks, 2 months, and let's come back to it, right? What's working, what's not working, which is where a lot of the analytics, again, coming back to Tiled, right, is what we built. The reason we wanted to build analytics and pathway analytics, like that's the important part of designing something, is like knowing what has worked and what has not. And so being able to come back to it, and then be able to iterate on it and learn from our mistake, not even mistakes, just learning from the things that maybe just probably we just really revealed that we didn't need it, right? And so let's take it out, let's improve on it, and then push publish and see where it goes, right?
Yeah.
So it's a nightmare. Like you're never satisfied fully, but
when we look at that IBM example and just seeing the finished product, right? Like that is where I feel like we have customers who turn into champions, right? But they come to us trying to be trailblazers, trying to do something different, knowing that PowerPoint and PDF just isn't enough, and there's got to be something out there. And I think seeing the inspiration and the art of the possible is always just like okay, it clicks. When it comes to taking a piece of content to the next level, what are like the top 3 things that you do inside of, let's say, Tiled to do that? One, and I'm gonna take number 1 from you because it's something I always recommend to customers. But video backgrounds on the cover page.
okay.
Immediately, right? It's like, ooh, okay, this not very easy to achieve in PowerPoint or in maybe a PDF that's on the web. So video background it's obviously something that shows this is different than your average bear. What are some of those other things that you find yourself?
Yeah. So I think hovers are great because it's a 2-layer, right? I think when you look at a PowerPoint or a PDF and then you have a big number and just a bunch of text below it, like when you see that, you can combine that into 2 layers, right? And so let's surface the 2x, but then let's hover over it and then give me the paragraph, right? I don't want, the PDF or PowerPoint, it just forces you to just give you everything all at once. But maybe I don't want, as a viewer, I don't want to, have all of that sort of noise going in there. I may not even care about the X or the 5x over here. Like I want to, like whatever's going to draw me first, and then if I want to know more about it, then I can hover over it or click it and have it revealed to me. So it's like hovers would be one. Also, again, like ways that we're trying to just foolproof a design is just adding the little kind of animations of, well, not necessarily haptics, but like a little pulse somewhere where, okay, it's almost like, yeah, hey, tap here, right? It's like, I need you to tap this. This is gonna be super important, so tap this, right? And so it just helps the user. You're not telling them you're dumb. You're just like saying, hey, this is very important. Or I'm trying to walk you through a certain flow that I may want to, that I feel is important for you to follow. So it just kind of helps them there. So
yeah, and the
or two.
The user interaction, the cues, right? The pulsing, the hey, scroll here, or the carousel, right? The pagination, right? Swipe through these, right? These are here for you to draw you in.
Yeah.
Scrolls like you did, right? Sometimes all of that text can be in 4 or 5 slides and you're able to not have to pack it in, so there's more real estate. But I know unless you're a seasoned designer, maybe it's a little harder to execute.
No, I do think scrolls, so in the way that you use scrolls, so sometimes I'll purposely, like on the artboard, again, this may be more for tiled users, current tiled users, like you set the artboard with like a headline, right? And maybe an intro copy. But then you have a lot of content below it, which is more scrollable. So you have your paragraphs, but then you kind of create this sort of fake parallax where you're having the intro copy and intro paragraph and your headline as fixed on the artboard, and then you have the scroll kind of comes up above it, right? So it kind of adds like a nice effect, which is very different from what you'd ever get in a PowerPoint or a PDF, right? Yeah, you see it on websites, but it's kind of a nice little effect where you're starting to layer things, and so you're even kind of like communicating to the end viewer that, hey, you have layered information, and so we're just trying to make this a little more interesting for you as well. And then within those scrolls, you bring it in, whether it be video or carousels, where now you have interactive like elements within that scroll as well. So I think, yeah, sometimes take it for granted, but just a simple parallax could help a lot. A lot of interest, as you're interacting with the content.
This is going to keep me honest now that it's recorded. I'm going to have to make a tutorial on that, give the people what they want, show them how to be a doctor of microapp design.
Yeah.
This has been great, man. I know we're a little bit over, but when it comes to the process, right, is there anything that you have come to find that can overcomplicate going from static to interactive? Anything that it's too complex, it's going to be too hard for someone to understand? Any best practices on that front?
Yeah, I think sometimes you can get hung up on making it too interactive, right? Sometimes you need like too many scrolls, too many clicks. Sometimes content just needs to be viewable, right? And so, yeah, a lot of times, I was talking about earlier the hovers, right? But there may be times when like it's just not going to like care to interact with it, right? And so what is that balance of the importance of information? And so that's where a lot of times that's where the back and forth with the client comes in, right? Where it's like, what needs to be viewed? What can you not have your customer look at, right? So those things that we try to just always surface up. But if there's like secondary information where it's like, yeah, I just want them to see the 100x, but I don't need them to really read the additional information. So that's when, okay, now I know I can put that in as a hover, right? And so I think that's I think a big one is just trying to, where's that balance of too much interaction or too much navigation, right?
Awesome, man. It's super just fascinating to watch you work and get an understanding for how you operate and how you approach solving these problems, and helping brands really unlock what's next for them. Just really appreciate you taking the time to share your wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, anytime. Yeah, design is my passion, so yeah, thanks for having me on.
It was a great episode. I really appreciate your time, Matt. I think not only did you kind of reveal a lot of your process in a really cool way, but also I think people are going to see a lot of value in how you get from A to B. It feels kind of like an enigma a lot of times. And the way you broke it down and threw together a very formatted document and showed us through. I think that's incredible. So really appreciate it.
Yeah.